The world today is seeing a number of headwinds. We are seeing conflicts continue, we are seeing new wars break out, we are seeing the world getting impacted by huge climate-related disasters, and more importantly, as many people await President-elect Trump getting into the White House, there is a widespread expectation of changes and tariffs coming into play. All of these impact supply chains in a huge way. Again, these could be opportunities for India, or it could pose some challenges. Joining me today is Sanjay Tolia, who will help us to understand how the Union Budget 2025 will propel India to be a manufacturing powerhouse.
Hey, thanks Vivek. And I clearly echo what you said. I think all this put together is really going to impact the global supply chain. If you go back to history, during COVID, the government actually brought in PLI. The government also brought in reduced corporate tax rate of 15%. It didn't really get us as much as we wanted, but probably I think it's a second chance and we should capture that. So some of the things which I would expect from the government to do to get the advantage of this is trying to bring some parity between the tax treaties and the domestic tax law. Try and exempt goods which are stored in India, raw materials, finished goods, for the purpose of manufacturing, contract manufacturing, and exempt them. Allow foreign ownership of equipments in India for manufacturing. Work towards enabling the bilateral trade agreements with different countries to bring in raw materials and to export goods outside. I think the other one is we have a very successful program on advanced pricing agreement for various international related party transactions. I think there is a need to bring the customs alignment with this APA, and the government can actually figure out a way to enable this sort of manufacturing from India to other parts of the world, is to give one advanced pricing agreement both for customs and for income tax. I think the whole idea is that if we put this as a package and put it together and enable manufacturing at scale, I think we could be the powerhouse and actually take the advantage of the world.
No, that's great, Sanjay. I totally agree. I think there are a number of things that we will need to do to position ourselves as a preeminent manufacturing powerhouse. If I now switch to a slightly different topic, traditionally we have been known as a services-heavy economy. But what we've seen in the market over the last 1 year at least, or maybe a little bit more, is this huge advent of GCCs or Global Capability Centers. And just to throw out a few stats, there are more than 1,700 GCCs today. They employ over almost 1.5 million people and contributing very significantly to our economy. Any thoughts in terms of how this can be further fueled?
No, that's again an interesting one. You can't close a conversation without talking of services. If you look at the GCCs and companies which have been providing export services, clearly they had their share of tax holiday, whether it was EOU, whether it was SEZ. And I think the one which is available right now is the GIFT City. But to aggravate because most of the companies as we see around the world are actually thinking of bringing GCCs. As NESCOM puts it, the 1,700 numbers is probably going to go to 2,000 or 2,100 in just few years. How do we enable that? And I think a PLI-like scheme, because one of the objectives of PLI was to increase domestic employment, because that was something which we had to address after COVID.
No, thanks, Sanjay. I think a PLI equivalent for GCCs is a great example. And I do think with what's all happening with emerging technologies and Gen AI and the amount of talent that we have in the country, in the technology space, this space is going to be very, very active as we kind of go forward. Maybe just shifting slightly, the world is also about, being green. Yeah. And we are seeing, the unfortunate events, at least in the West Coast of the US, making headlines and really, really sad for what's happening out there. How do you see us, going down that path? The government today is on record, our installed renewable energy capacity is, almost 200 gigawatts, and there are aspirations to take this to about 500 gigawatts. How do you think, again, this is something which can get further enabled through fiscal incentives or otherwise?
I think it's time to think about the direct tax and indirect tax benefits to all the players in the system too. You can't just say that manufacture an electric vehicle, without giving the benefit to the user of the electric vehicle and push the electric vehicle user to say, hey, I'll give you some benefit for you to use. I'll give you some benefit for producing the electric vehicle. I'll give you some benefit for producing the battery and the charging stations to support this ecosystem. I think there could be something which is like an investment today, which the government will have to make. And that has been the history in many other parts of the world, that the government invests in some of these things to take it to scale and then recoups it like a return on investment over the next 10 years or 15 years. And I think that could be our journey to 2060 to become net zero.
No, absolutely. We hear a lot about carbon taxes, and especially Europe has been very active in some of these legislations. Any views in terms of what we can expect? Is there going to be something similar, and how equipped are we to respond to some of the export-related requirements in light of some of these carbon taxes which are there?
So the one which is top on the agenda of everyone is CBAM, which is the Carbon Border Adjustment Mechanism, which has been introduced by EU. It comes to life on 1st Jan 26. And I think there is a lot of pushback from some of the European countries. And one of the opportunity which we have is to look at how do we conclude our free trade agreement with the EU, because that's actually up for conversation. So my personal view is that if some of these trade barriers would come through tariff, there will be a counter tariff which one will have to put in to balance this out. So one could be through negotiations to ensure that it doesn't come through, because the minute you start doing this counter tariff mechanism, it actually creates inflation of goods, the cost, because tariff is only going to inflate, and it could actually impact some of the things which we want to do, because if we start getting into this tariff war, it will take away the opportunity we just spoke about on manufacturing and services. So I think it will have to be very, very tactful in terms of how do you diplomatically manage these conversations and ensure that you don't get into a tit for tat.
Anything else, Sanjay, which we're hearing, the other parts of the world, which we should be looking forward to in this budget? Or
there is a lot of expectation that Pillar 2 would be introduced by India. But I just want to share this with the audience that one is India doesn't see a huge amount of benefit through the Pillar 2, because most of the Indian companies having subsidiaries outside are almost in jurisdictions which are above 15% of tax. The other one is clearly the tax rate of India is 25, except that you have an operation in GIFT City, so you will have a very minimal additional taxes coming through that. But Indian companies, and they are around 200 of them, which will probably get covered under the Pillar 2 regime, will have to do the compliance in various other countries which have already brought in the law, which will start ticking from the next year, in terms of paying that taxes in those countries, if any. Even if you do not have to pay taxes in those countries, you have to do a huge amount of compliance there. So I think that's a message which I would give to our audience, that prepare yourself to ensure that the compliance which is coming up is programmed well in your system. You need to do a lot of work with the ERP systems and others to ensure that you are able to do those compliance in time. But let's wait for the government to announce what they have done, because the last 1 year they were actually looking at what is the cost benefit analysis on Pillar 2 to be introduced in India. Maybe there would be something we will hear from the finance minister.
Thank you. Very, very helpful, Sanjay. I think we talked about India as a manufacturing destination, GCCs coming of age, how we can be green, and of course some of the other developments across the world. So looking forward to the Union Budget 2025 and
Same here.
Putting India ahead on the growth trajectory.
Perfect. Thank you for having me.